Hey y'all, are you ready to work on your first day of sequences and series? That's what we're up to today. This unit is not too bad. It's going to feel very easy. If you don't have your calculator handy, go ahead and go get your trusted friend here. I'm going to show you how to do some of this in your calculator. Okay, what is a sequence and what's a series? A sequence is a list of numbers like 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8. It's just a list of numbers. A series is when we add them up. So let's look at this. Right here, AN just means that's like saying Y equals, okay? So it's just saying AN equals 2N plus 1, right? So it's saying write the first 5 terms. When we start writing terms, when they say first 5, that means they want you to start with n equals 1. If it wants you to start with any number other than 1, it will specify n is 0 or n is 2 or wherever they want you to start. So if I wanted to write the first 5 terms, I can say a sub 1 equals 2, 1 plus 1, which equals 3. A2 equals 2 times 2 plus 1, which equals 5. A3 equals 2 times 3 plus 1 equals 7. A4 equals 2 times 3 plus 1 equals 9. And then, of course, I'm out of room because I write too big. A5 equals 2 times 5 plus 1, which is 11. So to write the first 5 terms, I would write 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Now I want to point something out that you may or may not have noticed. This is linear, right? And if something's linear, now they're not all linear, but this particular one is linear. So I don't know if you've noticed in the past, but when you have a linear, if you look at the order of numbers, they go up by the slope. So as soon as you find the first one, slope is 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. You could go on forever and it'd be very fast, right? The other thing that you could do is we can go in here and we can type that in. What was it? 2n plus 1. Of course, your calculator doesn't have to have an n. X is the accepted letter of your calculator. And then just go to second graph, which is your table. Whoops, mine is goofed up, so I'm going to go second window, tell it I want to start with 1. That tells you where to start. Now I'll go back to my table, and I get a list of numbers. So let's do the next one. The next one is not as much fun to do, so I'm just going to type it in, 2 minus -1. Remember, the negative key is this one right here. It's not, this is the minus, this is the negative key, so right there we need the negative key. And of course, I'm going to raise it to the x power. Now, you could go plug 1 in and 2 and 3. And we're going to look. And what are the numbers? 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Now, you notice they alternate. Why do they alternate? Well, 1 raised to any power is 1. And if the power's odd, it stays negative. If the power's even, it goes positive. So you're just going to, so 2 minus negative or 2 minus 1. So that's why it alternates. And then let's do the next one right here. This is a good review of your calculator to do your fraction. Alpha y equals 1. And now just type in what you see. So 2 plus negative x, oops, -1, sorry. -1 raised to the x. It should look exactly like it does. And on the bottom we have x. So then I just go to my table and I can see. Now I want to show you something about your calculator. Notice this gave me 1, 3/2, 1/3, 3/4, 1/5. The reason it gave me my answers as fractions is because I put it as a fraction here. Now if I go this way and I decide not to use the fraction key, and I want to show you this because sometimes you might want a decimal. So I could do that, right? So I type the top in, so type it right, divided by the bottom. Now when I go, it will give me decimals. So if you want a decimal form, then you don't use the alpha y equals. If you want a fraction form, use alpha y equals. There we go. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. The factorial button, what a factorial means is you multiply by every number that comes before. So 4 factorial means 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So 4 times 3 is 12 times 2 is 24. Okay, now if you want that on your calculator, the factorial is hit your math key. Okay, so we're going to go math and then go over to probability. If you've got an older calculator, it'll say PRB without the O. And, oops, sorry. Math, PRB, and you want to pick number 4. 4 is the factorial button. So if I wanted to put this in there, right, I will hit my fraction, alpha y equals 1, and I will just type it in, 3 math 4 8 math 4. Then I'll go on the bottom and I'll write 4 math 4 and 4 math probability 4. Did I type it in right? And I get 420. Okay, so you take a second and type C in, and when you're done, you should get 12. And I want to show you that you don't really need a calculator for these. Let me show you how easy this is. So if I take this one and this one on the bottom, well, 3 factorial is 3 times 2 times 1. I don't need to write the 1. And 7 factorial, I'm going to leave alone. Now 9 factorial I can write as 9 times 8 times 7. And if I don't want to write 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I can write the factorial. And what do you notice about 7 factorial and 7 factorial? They're gone. Then I could say 2 goes into 8 4 times, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 times 4 is 12. So those are very easy to do by hand if you don't have a calculator, but it does work in the calculator if you want to use your calculator. All righty, not too bad, right? Let's look at a little bit more. One thing I want to tell you is that by definition, 0 factorial equals 1. So anytime you have a 0 factorial, it's going to be 1. Okay, so let's look at this, right? The first 5 terms of the sequence begin. Notice here they gave you instructions. Remember we said it always starts with 1 unless they tell you otherwise, so we're going to begin with 0. Now I'm going to go put this in, and I am going to use alpha y equals, I like that better, alpha y equals 1, and I just type exactly what I see, 3 to the x. Remember, your calculator does not know that n is n or x or y. It just knows you want a variable there. Plus 1, and this is x, and then you're going to go to math PRB 4. It should look exactly the same, so take a second and make sure it looks the same. Why does my x look so weird? Okay, so now we're going to go to the table. And this time it said to start with 0, so I'm going to scooch up to 0, and my first 5 terms are 2, 4, 5, 14 thirds, and 41 over 12. Okay? Remember, if you use the fraction, you'll get answers in fractions if you use the alpha y equals. Okay, so now we're going to look at one more thing. You may recognize this from the Greek letter. This is sigma, and this is the symbol to add or sum. So what this means, I'm going to do this one without the calculator, and then I'll show you how to get this in the calculator. So this means start with 1, so 4 times 1 plus 1, and plug every number until you get to 4. 4 times 2 plus 1, 4 times 3 plus 1, 4 times 4 plus 1. I stop here, so that's the last one I plug in, and I start here, so that's the first thing that I plug in. So I add these up. Now 4 plus 1 is 5. Now remember, this is linear, this particular example, because I is to the first power. So we know that if the slope is 4, my next number will be 9. 9 and 4 is 13, 17. So this sigma notation means to add those up. So I'm going to add these numbers up, which is 44. Now, if you want to find that in your calculator, there's a couple of different ways. You can go to alpha window 2, and it puts it in. And if I'm remembering right, you can also go to math 0. Okay, so let's write that down. In the calculator is alpha window 2 or math 0. So let's try and put this in. So all you do right here, just type, can you see me? Oh, wait. X is 1, then use your arrow to go up. It stops at 4, and it's 4x plus 1. And you just hit enter, and you'll have the total. So you can pause me for a second, and you type these other ones in. Remember, math 0 is the fastest way. It does. They put a K, but you're going to just stick an X, and you go 2, 5, and scooch over 2 plus x cubed, right? Oops. I close my parentheses. I don't need that there. There we go. You just type in what you see and hit enter. And that one is 232. So hit the pause button for a second and you type that one in and make sure you're okay. I'm using the alpha y equals. Well, let me go to math 0 and I'm going to go x 6 1. Now, when I go in here, I like to do a fraction. So alpha y equals 1. And I'm putting 2 on the top. And then x, remember how to find that? Math, PRB 4. And I hit enter. So mine is in a fraction. If I went back up here and I didn't use a fraction, and I did 2, and I did the divided by key, and then I do x factorial. Now I will get a decimal. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, and I will see you back here next time. Have a great day.